As natural wood species go, redwood is in a class of its own. A sustainable alternative to tropical hardwoods, redwood is grown and harvested to the highest environmental standards in the world. Named for the dark red heartwood at the center of the tree, redwood imparts natural beauty, warmth, and durability to interior and exterior building applications, including decking, fencing, paneling, siding, exposed beams and timbers, pergolas, and other shade structures. To learn more about redwood from Humboldt Sawmill, please visit getredwood.com. Here's our first question, folks. This comes from James. Hey, podcast. I thought of a question that absolutely mystifies me. I've searched the archives, Taunton books. I've bought a truly embarrassing number of Taunton books on thrift books, but not Mike Gerton's roofing tome, as it has a steep price of $20. And I spent an hour Googling on the internet and cannot find a complete answer. When does fascia and rake trim need coil stock and when does it not? We live in an 1800s farmhouse. We're going to be renovating and all the exterior trim was covered with coil stock 30 or 40 years ago. We hate it though. We're going to be renovating and recently did renovate an outbuilding where we used boral. The installation instructions seem to suggest boral does not need coil stock and the same for PVC. I assume it just needs drip edge under the roof shingles. Does wood fascia and rake trim always need coil stock? This question might get me to pull the trigger on Mike's roofing book, even with its steep price. So Brian, are there any, is there a general theory of when you need coil stock and when you don't?
But if we answer this question, we're not going to sell a book.
So
I'm torn here. Okay. So the short answer to the question is that roof trim never needs coil stock.
It's kind of an anathema in New England, I would say, except on homes from the 80s or newer.
Yeah, it's not a functional thing like drip edge, right? Drip edge has every roof needs drip edge. It serves a purpose. It sends the water out and over the edge of the roof, so it can't wick back underneath the shingles where it could rot the trim or the sheathing, and hopefully it drips over, the fascia or rake boards or whatever trim board is there. I think people wrap roof trim and coil stock for a couple of reasons. On older houses, they do it when the roof trim is in bad shape. They want an easy and inexpensive way to cover it up. And then, on new houses, it would be done as sort of a low maintenance option, I think, for your roof trim, just something that you could put it over, you could put coil stock over sub fascia or, your framing boards at your rake instead of having to pay for trim boards and have this sort of low maintenance option. My preference aesthetically is to not use coil stock for roof trim. I would rather see wood or boral or some other material in terms of the look. And my preference for repair is to repair the fascia boards or the rake trim. I've actually taken houses. I've actually remodeled houses that have had coil stock wrapped trim, not only on the roof line, but around windows and stuff. And I think often it does more harm than good. Often water continues to get behind the coil stock and the house continues to rot behind the coil stock. So if you don't do an excellent job with that coil stock that's actually keeping water out, even using it to cover up problems isn't necessarily a great idea. Tell me why I'm wrong, Patrick.
Well, I was just going to point out there's a third reason people use coil stock on trim, and it's because you can have the trim wrapped and finished before you can even get out a paintbrush and stir a can of paint. And you need to do that 3 times, right? So while your carpenter's up there with scaffold and putting up the sub fascia and the other, behind the scenes overhang details, they have the coil stock either in pre-bent pieces or they have someone on the ground with a brake and they're making them and putting it up there and boom, you're done and move on to the next part of the house. So on affordable houses, I don't think you're ever going to see anything else. I too like painted trim and these folks want to put PVC or boral on their overhangs and that's fine. But I would also point out that you can make, wood last 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 200 years, and you can repair it very easily with stuff you'll always be able to buy at the lumberyard. So I don't know. I'm torn, Brian. What do you think, Ian?
Well, I think first you'd probably lose your membership at the Greenwich Elks Lodge if you
Talk about
if you
aluminum
if
fascia.
you put a bunch of aluminum fascia and aluminum wrap on your house.
I'm
Your
pretty sure that of all
your
the fine
code to
home
get in
building
the door
staffers
wouldn't work.
ever, I've put more aluminum soffit and fascia and trim on our habitat builds. The
Yeah,
rehabs were, tall and complicated, and folks just couldn't paint every few years, right? So
right. But I
you'd
think
hope to
that's
do
the
that
point.
correctly and, have
It's
someone
low.
not touch it.
Yeah, it's low cost and lower maintenance. And I would
Mm.
say lower maintenance because anybody that's looked at a home that is maybe 10, 15, 20 years old, that coil stock is not really the same color as it was anymore. And I think Brian makes a great point. I think back to a lot of window jobs that I did, you would pull that coil stock off and yeah, bees
Yeah.
nests and hornets nests and rot and just
The
bad
compost, you could
flashing
shake it out of
details. Yeah.
the bent pieces of aluminum, right? When you
Yeah.
Yeah, it's often as a band-aid to hide rotted trim, and it looks great, but makes the situation worse long term, as Brian suggests.
To your
It is
point about
fun though when you're pulling off the roof pieces and you find a really cool cornice behind some bent metal. That's always fun as a carpenter.
You were saying, Brian?
it's just to your point about affordability, Patrick. I remember, balancing affordability on any house project can be a challenge. And I remember many years ago now, we published a house in Chicago, and the architect explained how they used the more expensive but also more aesthetically pleasing materials on the exterior closer to the ground, closer to where people would actually be encountering them up close. And as they went up to the building, they used the more affordable stuff. So if you need to save some money, using a more affordable material around your roof is at least is maybe somewhere to do that, and save a little bit of money for a beautiful entry door or something.
What do we think about boral versus PVC, Ian, for Jay? What would you recommend if of those two synthetic materials?
I have a slight preference for boral since it is inert and it doesn't expand and contract as much as PVC. Once you start to get into those long lengths of PVC, the joints between two pieces get pretty complicated with the backing and the overlap and the correct caulk. If it does want you to put caulk in that specific brand of PVC, I don't believe all of them call for that sealant in the overlap joint. But Boral's nice. It's really heavy, and it'd be a two-person job putting up rake trim or eave trim if you were going to do it with Boral.
What are the lengths with that stuff, Ian? Because fascia, longer is better, and I
Yeah,
think PVC comes up to 20 feet, right?
yeah, and I think Boral's capped at 16. Uh, they might have some 18-foot lengths that you can get in certain pieces, but depending on how you carry Boral, it is somewhat fragile if you don't pick it up correctly. If you kind of pick it up laying flat and you grab it in the middle, even if you extend your arms all the way out in each direction, it can be pretty risky moving it around. So I
Mm.
think you'd need two people carrying it on its standing edge.
I think you should use pine, Jay, and if you can spring for it, buy some, clear stock because the knots are the problem, both the staining and seems to be where rot gets a foothold. And you can replace it 3 or 4 times uh, before you pay for the premium associated with boral or PVC.
One thing I would add about the coil stock is there is a division of labor in home building that fits in. So uh, your framing carpenter can put the windows in. They can put
Mm.
up two by material as the rake and the eave, and then the siding contractor or siding specialty carpenter would come in and then wrap all of that in aluminum while putting the siding up. So there is a neat division of labor for efficiency and cost savings in medium and low cost building using that product.
I'll tell you what, I see it on everything here in Newtown, 80s and newer, even on homes that cost, $1 million plus. It's just normal here. Well, if y'all have any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear from you, because and a few things are as more contentious as aluminum coil stock in the building industry.
For sure.